all of the juvenile probation officers that are able to be in attendance today, and also the juvenile court officers. We're here today because I think it's extremely important to discuss how we can implement restorative practices within juvenile courts, and I thought it would be a great start to start with these probation officers who are working with these juveniles throughout the court proceedings, and also the judges that ultimately determine the fate of these individuals. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through a basic what restorative justice is and how it could be implemented into these juvenile courts. So first we want to discuss what is restorative justice. Restorative justice is more of a philosophy founded on the belief that justice is best served when the community, victim, and offender receive balanced attention and when all parties gain tangible benefits from their interactions with the juvenile system, in this case. So that means that there are three different aspects ensuring that restorative justice is successful. The first is community safety, the second is accountability, and the last is competency development. I will go into a little bit more detail with all of these. Accountability, that is extremely important to debunk the fact that some people say that restorative justice is soft. Restorative justice holds these offenders accountable. So when an individual commits an offense, the offender is obligated to the individual victim and the community to take accountability. Accountability can not just have to be the thought of apologizing and saying sorry, but also things like restitution or service to the victim or community. So community service and or paying fees back if it was a property crime to the victim to ensure that everything gets fixed and it's covered under the offender's expenses. Second is competency development. Offenders who enter the juvenile justice system should be more capable and competent once they leave when they have entered. So that means basically in the restorative justice process, we need to ask the question, what do you need in order to change your behaviors? We don't want to take this time and waste it. We want it to be more of a rehabilitative approach and best accomplish what the offenders want to work on. We also want them to become more productive of society in a larger community. This may include examples such as vocational training, education, and different work experiences that we can link them with while they're working with us. Lastly is community safety. Community safety is huge, definitely when dealing with offenders and juveniles. The juvenile justice system has a responsibility to protect the public from these juveniles in the system. That being said, we can use restorative justice as an alternative to incarceration because we do know that incarcerating a youth in a locked detention facility can be extremely expensive and that not all of them are a harm to themselves or others in the community. So really drawing that line and understanding who is needing to be held and then who can be remaining in their community and not causing a threat. So why restorative justice within the juvenile justice system? It's a new way to think about crime and the justice that goes along with it. We emphasize that what crimes hurt relationships and people who live in the community. Crime is often viewed as something against the court or the state when it is in trial, and with restorative justice, we really provide an increased role for the victims. So understanding that the victims' voices should be heard and they're given opportunities to state their own needs and the impact the crime has had on them. Also, community involvement is a huge aspect of the RJ model. This can involve community agencies such as probation, like you guys are here today, the courts, school personnel, or faith-based groups for intervention and prevention programs. So really making sure that the entire community is involved to meet the needs of the offender and the victim through the restorative justice process. I also want to discuss the three pillars of restorative justice. The first pillar is harms and needs. This focuses on harm is experienced by people and the communities, and then the restorative justice practices seek to repair this harm. And we understand that those who are harmed have an opportunity to define their needs rather than having others define their needs for them. So making sure that, again, that the victim has a voice. Engagement is the second pillar of restorative justice. This is when the victim, offender, and community are all provided significant roles in restorative practices. This is huge. They also need to all be involved when making decisions, whether that be the outcome of the offender's case or what the victim wants the offender's case to look like. And also at the end, sharing their stories and coming to a consensus about what should be done in the best interest of all three parties, those three parties being the victim, offender, and community. The last pillar is obligations. This is making sure that there is accountability and responsibility for the offender, and we understand that there will be consequences of the behavior in restorative justice. They just might not always be the more punitive approach that the regular juvenile justice system is taking currently. And then it's also a responsibility to do the right by the people that they have harmed. For example, if they steal something from somebody's house, this being the offender, the victim will have the opportunity to take what they want is important to them and give the offender the responsibility to fix that. I lastly want to share with you a video that shows restorative practices with juveniles.
Anytime a youth offends, besides the victim, the community is affected as well. And it comes across in things like not feeling safe in your neighborhood, not letting your kids play in the park, and worrying about your kids going to school even. We're going to do a practice scenario for a restorative justice conference. When David got in trouble, Officer Estepa called and talked to you both about this opportunity to stay out of the juvenile justice system. The way that juvenile justice system is set up now isn't necessarily the best that it can be. Boys and young men of color seem to be disproportionately represented, and unfortunately it starts with one arrest, but it soon generates into a pipeline, and it eliminates a lot of opportunities for these kids, when really if we can catch it at this early stage, it gives them this opportunity to get out of that pipeline.
One day I was just hanging out right there, and then he was crushing my side. I just decided not to let him. I pushed him and told him to go back to the other side.
Now when you're on campus, do you ever see David?
Yeah, I do.
And how do you act in those situations? What do you do?
I'm kind of like nervous, and I feel disappointed.
If you get in trouble, they're just going to take you to jail. Here you can solve problems another way, either personally, like talking to the person that you hurt or the person that hurt you. You can just talk and solve things.
You know that you did it, that is wrong, and you can fix it. Because if you go to jail, you're not going to fix it. You can just make it worse.
So I just wanted to share that video to show an example of how we can implement restorative practices in our Erie County juvenile justice system. Again, I want to thank you all for attending today, and I hope that this presentation is convincing to you and you'll bring it back to other colleagues and begin to implement restorative practices. Thank you.